this episode, we're talking about what it takes to actually create, experience, and have more money. And I'm also going to tell you the 3 biggest thoughts that I see performers bump up against as they're starting to create these containers. You ready? Let's do it. Hello, you are listening to the Love Your Life as a Performer podcast. I'm Kelly Youngman, and I am the life coach for performers. I help actors, singers, and dancers love themselves and their lives way more. So keep listening to learn how you can love your life both on and off the stage. Hello, and welcome back to episode 73 of the Love Your Life as a Performer podcast. I just want to say before we jump in that life has been feeling, well, actually, now that I pause and say this, I was like, life has been feeling so amazing. And earlier in this week, I noticed that I was having this thought, like I should be further along, I should be happier. Just that whole story and narrative was coming in. And I was sharing this experience with my community inside of Momentum. And we talked about it on our call on Monday that, you know, anytime we're in that experience, it's not good, bad, right, or wrong, but we get to just realize that those thoughts are simply comparison thoughts. And especially sometimes when we're having the experience, it can feel, I don't know, we have this judgment of like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be feeling this way, no matter what it is. I shouldn't be feeling this way. This shouldn't be happening. And I just find that any time we're in that thought, of course, it's going to give us a negative experience of whatever we have going on. And honestly, I feel like I'm going to do a whole podcast about this. I haven't said that in a while, but I'm going to make a note and I'm going to, make sure I circle back on this because I think it's so important to remember that anytime we're having that thought, we're just challenging what we're experiencing. And I think something that's allowed me to soften that experience this week, which allowed me to get back into my high vibration, my high frequency, and my power, was really remembering that that's just part of how brains work. Our brains will make the comparison, and we're not good, bad, right, or wrong when it happens. And we get to be conscious and in control of whether we give that thought our energy, focus, and if we decide to believe and engage it as true, right? So I don't know. I just really watched myself have this powerful breakthrough this week where I was able to get back to neutral and then get back to excitement and power for whatever's going on. And I mean, this is another podcast episode too, but we just get to check in with ourselves when we're feeling really bored or disengaged. And none of those feelings are good, bad, right, or wrong. And when we take time to be curious, we can sort of zoom out or zoom in and identify the thoughts, the thought umbrellas that are causing us to stay in that frequency. And so anyways, I wanted to share that before we jump into our last podcast episode in this mini money makeover series that we've been doing. Also, I can't remember if I said this on the last one or not, but I'll just say it again. If you've been enjoying this mini series, let me know. Share the podcast, tag me on Insta, or send me a DM, send it to someone you love, help them and invite them to engage and expand too, because again, this resource is here and the podcast is really this overflowing generosity, love, invitation to keep rising together. Something that comes up for my clients a lot and myself too is what happens when we are expanding. Again, this is a whole other podcast I could do, but I'll say it's this fear of am I leaving people behind when I'm growing and expanding? The truth is everyone's on their own journey, and we can always be lovingly inviting, sharing, talking about the things that we're learning when we let go of the judgment that someone else isn't where they need to be. And like, it's not one or the other. We don't have to either like love and accept someone for who they are or like completely leave them behind, not engage with them, right? Like both can be true. And we can be experiencing growth as we're inviting people to do the work with us. A lot of times it's just like, it can be as simple as sharing it and doing it with love rather than judgment. And so that's what I got for you today. Let's jump into this money series and wrap it up with a little bow. And again, if you're enjoying these money mindset podcast episodes, I mean, I know there will be more. And let me know. Let me know what's resonating with you. Okay. I'm going to take a sip of water and a deep breath because I did have coffee this morning and I had a couple of client calls and I'm just feeling really fired up. So I want to slow down, make sure that my body is moving with my thoughts so that whatever comes through today comes through with clarity and ease and love. Okay. So far in this series, we've redefined money. We've looked at and established that money comes from value. And because you are the value, you get to expand your money mindset, your wealth consciousness, and that's what generates more money, right? Whether you're offering that value to employers or through your own services, essentially money is energy, right? We've talked about what it looks like to shift your wealth from your money identity. We've defined what that is. We've looked at how you can start practicing raising your money identity. And then on the last episode, we talked about sort of what it looks like to engage with money management from this place of love and just like feeling so wealthy. And, as I was re-listening to the episode, I think one thing that I want to add is that I don't know why I just for so long, I had this thought that if and when I was really rich, I would never have to think about money again. And that is really one of the thoughts that kept me in this place of thinking that budgeting was to not be broke, rather than budgeting being this way to expand your wealth, right? And just like the entry point of that is so different because of how it feels. And so when I reestablished, and hopefully you did too, as you start looking at your numbers and knowing your numbers, deciding that that can be so fun and that there's no shame in needing to budget, like air quote, needing to budget, right? Like that's kind of what I always approached it as, like this thought of like, well, if I had money, I wouldn't need to be doing this thing, which created this association of broke energy and, almost like shame and embarrassment when I would sit down to do my numbers rather than letting it be a source of empowerment, even when we're looking at debt and allowing it to be a process and allowing it to take time. And also knowing that, I don't know, I've just created this really neutral relationship with my debt where I know that running a business that I'm hoping and knowing, not even hoping, knowing will become $1 million business. Of course, there's going to be time where I accumulate debt and do that with really strategic, powerful decision making. So all of this growth, all of this restabilization with my finances, all of this establishing trust with my money and my numbers and with me is only creating the capacity to have more and more money. And so I hope that resonates and lands in your brain and body. And if not, give it some time, or even better, come join us in Momentum to start the process of loving your money, even as an artist, a creative, and knowing that your capacity for wealth is not slighted, it's not shorted because you're a creative. Like your capacity for money, your experience of wealth comes from you owning and embracing the value that you have to offer the world. Okay. So that's really what we're going to get into today is how do we take all of these ideas and then create more money? Like, how do you actually do that process? And so one, it starts with addressing all of these things, and then you just get to decide. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. When you are knowing and trusting that you have skills, value to offer the world, offering it to the world can be simple. And whether you decide to really step into entrepreneurship or not, you can use this same idea, this same, framework to apply to how much you negotiate at a job, right? Like if you're deciding to be in a circumstance where you're an employee, all of these things can still be true because you're deciding to honor and acknowledge your value and how it's received and what you receive for that value. So regardless of whether it's a paycheck or, someone paying you directly, the same is true. You just get to decide that you are valuable. You get to honor the value you have to offer, and then you get to receive an equal energy exchange for that value. And again, I'm going to emphasize that when we are creating or receiving money for our value, it has nothing to do with our inherent value as a human, right? Like we just get to really decide, what do I want to receive for these skills, my perspective, my unique way of looking at the world? How do I want to put that together and receive the value of money for that thing, right? I'm trying to make sure that I stay on track with this episode because I can say so many things about this. And before I forget, the last announcement sort of thing that I do want to say is that inside of the paradigm, we literally look at creating your unique offer. We look at what are my skill sets? What do I enjoy doing? What do I love to do? How do I want to add value, impact, and service to my communities, the people around me? Like really then that's when it's like, oh, I just get to get paid doing what I love. It's not just like a nice idea. You can just decide that's how you receive money. And so if you are starting to look at, well, what would that be like? How do I want to package my value, which we're going to talk through a little bit now, I do want to say that the Paradigm July 2024 is enrolling soon. So if you are not on the wait list yet, go to kellyyoungmanwellness.com/links, LINKS, and you can get on the wait list now because, again, we will do this process in real time together. And all of the things that my brain wants to give you in one podcast episode, we will work together on throughout the 6 months of the container. Okay. And open enrollment for the July class is going to begin May 13th, 2024. If you're listening to this in real time. Okay. So make sure that you're on the wait list and you will be notified, and let's keep going. So in the simplest terms, when we're thinking about creating our value or deciding how we want to bundle this value, just know that it's a process of very simple decisions. Okay. I'm going to say this in the most basic way. You get to decide what is the container for this value. So, for example, if you're a singer, just know that you could teach someone else to sing, whether that is in coaching or voice lessons, right? Like whatever the specific flavor of that is. If you know how to sing, you could help someone else learn how to sing. So, for example, the container would simply be making the decisions about how do I want to offer this? Is it in a weekly lesson? How long is the lesson? Is it 60 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes? You just get to decide. And then you also just get to decide how much you want to charge for this service. Okay? You just get to decide. Now, I had this conversation the other day, so I'll insert it here. Remember, I was just saying that even if you don't step into entrepreneurship, you still get to decide. So maybe you're not offering voice lessons directly to people, but you're deciding to work for someone who has voice business. Okay? Again, you can decide how much the value exchange is for you, right? And maybe there's a salary or an hourly rate that is given to you by your employer. And then at the end of the day, you could also decide yes, no, counter offer. You could decide to negotiate. Maybe you don't want to work for this specific person because the energy exchange doesn't feel what you want it to be. So then you still have the choice, right? You still have the choice to decide on the exchange of value, aka money, by saying, okay, I can either say yes to this exchange, or I can go find another employee or employer, that will honor the value, the rate that I would like to be paid. Like, I really want you to believe or try to see that this could be true. You get to decide, right? You still get to decide. And this is where you really start seeing that the amount of money in your bank account is a direct reflection of how much value you're willing to acknowledge within yourself. Okay. And so again, these are very simple decisions that you can make, whether it's voice lessons or, public speaking coaching, etc., any kind of coaching, health coaching, life coaching, any kind of service you want to offer, babysitting, it's all the same. You simply get to decide, honor those decisions, implement them, and offer your value to the world. Now, when it comes to creating these offers, it's so interesting because there's like 3 things that come up consistently across the board. The first one is, I've never done this before. Or maybe you have, or you don't like it, or etc. But either way, if that's your thought umbrella, of course, you're not going to take action. But if you're thinking, I've never done this before, really what that's indicating is that you're uncertain of the value you're going to promise to someone. And I don't think it's good, bad, right, or wrong, but this is where you just get to decide, what do I consider the correct, air quote, correct exchange of value for what I'm going to offer. And so again, like knowing that these are just decisions you make about pricing, and honestly, I should just do a whole podcast about that. But like, this is what we talk about in the paradigm. You get to find a price that feels like a fuck yes for whatever value exchange you're going to offer, and then you can honor that, right? So the thought that I've never done this before is one of the obstacles that people bump up against when they're about to offer a service. / I don't know if I have the value to offer, right? I don't know if someone will pay me for this. Again, it's just your decision. And when you're really on board with acknowledging the value that you're going to give someone, you're going to feel confident to take that action. The second one is so interesting because I think a lot of performers have this fear of, well, if I do something outside of performing, people will think my career is over. Like, I've heard every flavor of this thought. It's so lame. It's embarrassing. If I tell people that I'm going to start doing audition coaching or acting coaching or some other way of making money that is not acting, they will think that my career is over. They will think that I'm no longer doing the thing. And really, this thought is just our own fear of thinking that if we give energy to something else, if we're not all in all the time on our performing career, that then we're giving up or we won't have enough energy to give, all of the thoughts, right? So just notice if you're telling yourself, well, I don't want to do this other thing, or I don't want to make money from a way that's not performing. It's also like the shadow thought of like, I need to only make money as a performer. That is when I will be successful. When I'm only supporting myself in my art and I'm only making money and getting paid as an artist, then I'm successful. It's like this like cute little bundle thought umbrella that just like doesn't serve us and we can untangle. Then similarly, the third one is thinking that I need to be fully available for my performing career. And I think this one is one of the biggest things that keeps performers in this cycle of like, I have to be available. And if I have to be available, I have to continue making money in a way that I could just leave this job. Like, i.e., restaurants, serving, bartending, like jobs that I air quote don't care about that much, so that I can just let it go. And I just think this is such a disservice to living a creative lifestyle, because then we don't plant the seeds to start thinking about sustainable wealth. We don't start finding and creating containers to make money doing what we love for the sake of availability. And interestingly enough, when you're doing something that you love, and if you don't have the fear that it means that you're less of a performer, you actually have more availability. Like, for example, in my business, and I say this with love because in the beginning, I used to have this fear too. It's like, oh my gosh, what do I do if I sign clients and then I book a tour or I book my next Broadway show? And I just had to look at it with love and actually solve for it. And when I did, I really like understood very deeply and simply that when I'm working for myself, I have the ultimate control. If I need to cancel a call for a final callback, I can, right? Like if I need to move a call with a client, I can. And when we're working in other jobs, etc., like the same can be true. There's always a solution. But when we're thinking that there's not, we won't even try to solve for it. Okay? So just notice, like, are you leaning into any of these fears that you're inexperienced, or maybe you don't have something valuable to offer? Are you believing that, no one will pay you because you've never done it before? Are you believing that, if you put something else out into the world, people will be confused, that they'll think your performing career has ended, that you're no longer fully committed to performing, so you will never get any jobs again? Are you believing that you need to be fully available, so you're only taking jobs where you could, air quote, leave tomorrow, without realizing that you could be creating sustainable wealth now? Okay. And if you're like, yeah, I'm doing that. Get on the Paradigm waitlist. Okay. I've seen so many performers stay stuck in this cycle. And again, like even when I was in Broadway shows doing what I thought was like the height of my career success, I never realized that didn't have to be my cap. That didn't have to be my limit for the amount of money that I was making. I could have been coaching the entire time. And honestly, that's what I'm building now, right? Like I'm building a sustainable way to make money doing what I love without any limit on my income, while actively supporting, engaging, loving my career as a performer. And I continue to create resources for myself to lean into creating any possibility that I want, right? Like that's available to you. And really, that's the way that you create more wealth. just deciding that you can. Okay? And so just know that you can use that value, your inherent skills at any time to create more money. You can decide that what you have to offer, what you know, what you've created for yourself is valuable to someone else. And if you're in the beginning stages, if you're still like, oh my gosh, I'm just like so bad at money. Again, it's not good, bad, right, or wrong, but like in the foundational work of money mindset, join us inside of Momentum. If you're like, I'm ready now to start creating more money and I have the capacity and I want to have the capacity to do this in a long-term sustainable way, and I have great ideas that I just haven't given myself permission to trust, join us inside of the paradigm. Get on the wait list now and be in the room in July. Because really, truly, so many of my clients have created containers and ways to make money. And when they do, they start experiencing more of it. And I don't think it's good, bad, right, or wrong. I think we have to go through these different stages of growth, like really, truly. And maybe I'll tell this story in depth on another podcast, but like, and maybe I said it already, but I was literally taping an audition for Wicked the same day I was like posed a question about leaning into my coaching business. And I remember the mental gymnastics of like trying to figure out like, oh my God, which one am I, a performer or a coach? And this is an expansion of self-concept, right? This is an expansion of knowing that you can have it all, which really is the work we're doing inside of the paradigm. And so with that, that's what I got for you today. If you want to make more money, you have to decide that you're ready to experience more wealth and also know that it's available to you. Then you can make this simple decisions of how do I want to offer this value? How do I want to give back to the world and my communities around me? And how do I want to receive the energy of that exchange, which is more money? Right? We have to be willing to see the value we're offering to experience more of the energy exchange and the receiving of money. It comes from you. Okay, that's what I got for you this week, and I'll meet you back here for another episode. Hey, I want to invite you to get started because if this is blowing your mind, imagine the impact of when we actually work together. You get to love your life as an actor, singer, or dancer, even including auditions. And if that sounds amazing, come join us inside of Momentum. You get lifetime access to the Performers Plan, coaching, community, and more, and I will be supporting you the entire way. Go to kellyyoungmanwellness.com/momentum to join us now.